Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me just start by saying how honored I am by Tim Scott's support. He's a fantastic representative of the state, and he does a great job on a daily basis caring about what's happening on the state. But I think he also represents everything that conservatism is about. We're going to talk about that more in a moment, but there's this idea out there that conservatism is about helping the people that have made it. Conservatism, people that have made it are going to be okay. They're going to be treated fairly. We're not going to demonize people that have been successful. But conservatism has always been about people that are trying to make it. That's why we believe in free enterprise. It's the only economic model in the world where you have a chance to get ahead without pulling anyone else down. And I don't know of anyone in the U.S. Senate, or for that matter, American politics, who understands that better, embodies it better, communicates it better, or fights for it better than Tim Scott. And that's why I'm so honored that he's supporting our campaign. And I want to thank you for sending him to Washington. So I want to start today by leaving you with two propositions in your mind. Number one, we're in a lot of trouble. This country's going through a terrible time. You know that. I don't have to tell you that. You don't need somebody up here telling you 15, 20 times, and you get criticized when you repeat things in politics, apparently. But so you don't need someone telling you over and over again how bad things are, because you feel it. You know it in your lives. Right? People living and working as hard as they can, but they're stuck living paycheck to paycheck. Small businesses are struggling. Big businesses may be prospering. We're weaker in the world. People respect America less. This morning you wake up to the news that China is putting missiles now and rockets in the South China Sea. They've built artificial islands, and now they're taking them over. And soon that'll mean they'll control, or try to control, the most important shipping lane in the world. We know the challenges we face. We know our Constitution is being ignored, and if we lose our Constitution, we lose our republic. Because the Constitution is what has kept this republic together for over 2 centuries, while others have faltered around the world. But I want to leave you with a second thought. And this is perhaps something we're not talking about enough. I believe with all my heart that despite the challenges we face right now, there are a few things that we need to do, and if we do them, I believe with all my heart that America has a chance to be freer and more prosperous and more influential and more powerful and more upwardly mobile than it has ever been in its history. I honestly and truly and deeply believe it, and I want you to believe that too, because it's true. We are on the verge of the greatest chapter in American history. You and I, this generation, can be the authors of the greatest chapter in the story of America. But first we have some things we need to take care of. It begins by winning this election. Because the road we are on right now is not the road to greatness. The road we are on right now is the road to decline. It began 8 years ago when this country elected Barack Obama as president. And when he ran for office, he said he was going to change the country. But what he meant was he was going to change the country to be more like the rest of the world. So that's how you get a president that ignores the Constitution. To him, the Constitution is a document that means whatever you want it to mean. And so it doesn't matter to him that there's a Second Amendment in the Constitution. He ignores it. It doesn't matter that there's religious liberty in the Constitution. He tries to undermine it. It doesn't matter that the Constitution says that the job of a president is to execute the law. He wants to write the law with his pen and his phone with executive orders. We have a president that views America as an arrogant power, an arrogant global power that needed to be cut down to size. That's how you get a president that cheers on as we are gunning our military with defense cuts that are inexcusable. As we betray our allies like Israel, our most important ally in the Middle East, one of the most important we have in the world, and we betray Israel. But we cut a deal with Iran, and they're going to get $100 billion of sanctions relief. And so the direction we are headed now is not the direction of greatness, it is the direction of decline. And if we lose this election, here's what it means if we don't win. If we don't win, that means the next president of the United States will be named either Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. Okay. Well, right. Yeah. That's why I'm running. I didn't realize you didn't like them. So, Bernie Sanders is a socialist. Now, usually in American politics, when you say about another politician or a candidate or something, you say, he's a socialist, she's a socialist. They deny it. They say, that's not true. You're smearing me. Bernie Sanders says it in his commercials. So I feel safe saying he's a socialist. He's a democratic socialist, not a communist, a democratic socialist. We don't want to be a socialist country. There are dozens and dozens of socialist countries all over the world. Literally, if you want to live in a socialist country, why don't you move to a socialist country? We want to be America. Hillary Clinton is, in my opinion, perhaps in yours as well, she's not qualified to be President of the United States. First of all, she put classified information on her email server. She knew that was in violation of the law. She didn't care because she thinks she's above the law. But more importantly, she exposed it to foreign intelligence agencies. She knows the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, these people hack computers. She didn't care. She put it on her, she's above the law. I guess she thought she was going to be elected president. She could pardon herself. But I want you to know the biggest problem I have is that she's disqualified from being commander-in-chief. Yes. Because she's disqualified from being commander-in-chief because she lied to the families of the people who lost their lives in Benghazi. She lied to them. She knew that that was a terrorist attack. She was telling people it was a terrorist attack, but not the families. And here's what I think and deeply believe. If you lie to the families of Americans who lost their lives in the service of our country, you can never be the commander-in-chief of the United States of America. And what does it practically mean? What does it practically mean if we lose this election? Here's what it means. It means Obamacare becomes permanent. It means Dodd-Frank becomes permanent. It means our military continues to get gutted. It means the deal with Iran stays in place. It means the next Supreme Court justice will not be anything like Antonin Scalia. It'll be someone like the people Barack Obama has appointed over the last few years. And if that happens, the Constitution's in a lot of trouble. If we get 5 or 6 people on the Supreme Court who believe the Constitution is whatever you want it to mean, the Second Amendment's in a lot of trouble. Religious liberty's in a lot of trouble. Federalism, the balance of power between the states and the federal government, is in a lot of trouble. This is serious. This is not a college football game. This is not a sport. The winner and the loser here matters. We cannot lose this election. We cannot lose this election. And so more than any other criteria, we have to ensure that our party, the Republican Party, nominates a conservative who can win. A conservative who can win. Because in the past they've told us nominate so-and-so because they're not that conservative, but because they're not that conservative, they give us a better chance to win. We can't afford to do that anymore. That's not what we're going to do this time. We need a conservative that can win. I'm as conservative as anyone running in this race. And I have a 15-year record of turning conservatism into action that proves it. I didn't become a conservative 2.5 years ago. Okay? I have a record. I'm not talking about anybody. I'm just saying 2.5 years ago. I've only been, public service has only been my full-time job for the last 5 years, but before that I was in the state legislature in Florida. It's 2 months out of the year, but I'm proud of my service there. For example, there was a court case, let me just theoretically, I'm not saying this happens, but theoretically, for a moment, imagine if a developer decided they wanted to take private property away with using government to build a hotel or something like that. Just theoretically, I'm not saying that happens, okay? After the Kelo decision in 2006, the Supreme Court said that's legal. A developer can use the power of government to take away your property because government thinks they'd rather have a hotel there instead of your house. You can't do that in Florida. Because when I was in the state legislature, I led the effort and we passed the law that became a model for the country. In Florida, we have career academies, meaning we do vocational training. We are training people in high school to work as welders and plumbers and pipe fitters, so when they graduate, they can start working. Because when I was Speaker of the House, we put that in place. You know that in Florida, when I was Speaker, we reformed our curriculum. We didn't use Common Core. We didn't rely on the federal government. We talked to our principals, our teachers. We did it at the local and state level. I led the effort and we cut property taxes. We balanced the budget the 2 years I was a Speaker at a difficult time when the housing market was collapsing, and we didn't raise any taxes. I'm proud of my service there. Then I was out of politics. Then I got a chance to run again and become a U.S. Senator. And, you know, it's hard to get things done in Washington these days, but I'm proud of the things we've done in the limited time I've been there. We brought accountability to the VA. Today, a senior executive at the VA who isn't doing a good job can be fired because of a law that I passed. Today, banks that do business with Hezbollah have sanctions on them because of a law that I passed. Today, the bailout fund in Obamacare, the bailout, they were going to use your taxpayer money to bail out private insurance companies. Today, that bailout fund is gone because of an effort that I led and put together to get rid of the bailout fund. By the way, when I'm president, we're going to get rid of the rest of Obamacare, not just the bailout fund. I'm proud of the work I've done in my time there. But this election's not a resume competition. This election has to be about what comes next for America. I have a record of 15 years that proves that I am as conservative as anyone in this race. But I am a conservative that can unite this party. We have to be together. If we're still fighting with each other in October, we lose. If we're still fighting with each other in September, we lose. So we'll have a spirited primary, but it has to end at some point, and then someone has to be able to bring us together, and I know that we can. Because we speak to every segment of this party, every segment of the conservative movement. But it won't be enough to just bring everybody together. We have to grow. We have to take our message, what we stand for, to people that don't vote for us now. Now, in the past, they've said the way to do that is, why don't you weaken your principles a little bit? Why don't you become more like the Democrats? That never made sense to me, because we already have a Democrat party. Why do we need two Democrat parties? What we need to do is take our message of free enterprise and limited government and a strong national defense and a strong culture with strong values. We have to take that message to people that don't vote for us and haven't voted for us. And let me tell you who they are primarily. They are the people who have been convinced that Republicans and conservatives only care about rich people. You know that meme out there. I've heard it. People said it to me. Republicans are for rich people. Democrats are for working people. That's a lie. That is a lie. Democrats are for big government. Do you know who wins in big government? The people who have made it. We have nothing against success. We celebrate success in this country. But I'm telling you that the bigger the government, the more people who have influence win. And if you don't believe that, go anywhere in the world, and I promise you, the bigger the government, the more the government dominates that country. I guarantee you the likelier it is that the same families and the same companies have been on top forever. Why? Because when government is big, the people who can afford to deal with government and have influence over government, they're the winners, and everyone else gets left out. And the evidence is all around us. Look at Dodd-Frank. The left says Dodd-Frank is to go after the big banks. Well, then why are the big banks bigger than ever? The big banks are bigger than they've ever been. You know why? Because all these rules and regulations, they're the only ones that can afford to follow them. Who can't follow those rules and regulations? Who struggles? The community bank, the local regional bank. In essence, the people that lend money to small business. You bury our economy with pages and pages of regulations, a big multinational corporation will hire an army of lawyers and accountants and lobbyists to deal with those regulations. But a small business that you opened up out of the spare bedroom of your home cannot, so that you get left behind. Look at the tax code. The tax code is filled with exemptions and loopholes. Who put the loopholes in there? It wasn't the mom and pop small business on Main Street. It was the people who can afford to hire an army of lobbyists from Wall Street and other parts of our economy in Washington, D.C. Big government crushes people that are trying to make it. Big government traps people in poverty. Look at our anti-poverty programs in America. They don't cure poverty. Our anti-poverty programs are like breaking your leg and being given a lifetime supply of painkillers. They're not going to fix the broken leg. They're just going to make you more comfortable in your pain. Our anti-poverty programs do nothing to cure poverty, because the only cure for poverty is a good-paying job. And our anti-poverty programs, welfare and food stamps, they do nothing to help you find a good-paying job. Big government hurts people who are trying to make it. And I know I can take our message to people that are trying to make it. You know why I know I can take it with credibility? Because I have lived the way they're living now. I grew up the way they are growing now. I grew up paycheck to paycheck. When Jeanette and I were first married, for many years early in our marriage, we lived paycheck to paycheck. Now, I've had some people say the last couple of days, define paycheck to paycheck. So I've thought about it. I said, here's paycheck to paycheck, okay? You write a check on Wednesday, but you know direct deposit doesn't come till Friday. So you date it Saturday, right? I'm not saying I ever did that. I'm just telling you. I know what it is to live paycheck to paycheck. I grew up that way. My mom was a maid. She was a stock clerk at Kmart, a cashier. She built aluminum chairs at a factory. My father was primarily a bartender at hotels. They were not rich people. They were not influential people. They lived the American dream. So I know it. I come from there. I have people in my family that are still there. By the way, they're nurses, firefighters, teachers, and they live paycheck to paycheck. They went to college and got a degree, and they live paycheck to paycheck. We are going to take our message to them. We're going to take our message to young Americans, some of whom today are living with thousands and thousands of dollars of student loan debt. 500% increase in student loan debt over the last 10 years. You know why I'm so passionate about it? Because I had $120,000 in student loans, which I only paid off 3 years ago, 4 years ago, three and a half years ago. I wrote a book. It's called An American Son. That's how I paid it off. It's now available on paperback. You see, guys, the joke always works. All these people in the media that follow me around, they're like, I see them mouthing the joke. Paperback. Because I say it all. If a joke is funny, you keep telling it, right? It's free enterprise. I've never met her, but I paid Sally Mae a lot of money on that student loan. That's a new joke, so I've only said it for like 4 days. So, my point is, I know what that feels like, and that's why I'm the only Republican that talks about student loan debt. You want to reach people that are 25, 28 years old in this country that are struggling with that? People think, press thinks, oh, it's all about social issues. I'm going to tell you what it's about. It's about the fact that they owe $50,000, they have a college degree, and the only job they can find they could have had without the degree and without the loan. And so they're upset. We have to have a message. That's why we have a plan on that. And by the way, we're also going to take our message to parents and working families. I'm always asked, why do you have a per-child tax credit increase in your tax plan? I'll tell you why. Because being a parent's the most important job you'll ever do. I'm telling you, I believe I'll be elected President of the United States, and I will lead this country, and I'll be re-elected if we so choose to do, and the American people agree. And yet the most important job I will ever have is what I'm doing now with my 4 kids. Okay? Parenting is the most important job in the world. And it's hard to raise kids today, and it's expensive. And so here's what I don't understand. How can it be that our tax code says to business, if you invest money in a piece of machinery, you can write that off your taxes? I agree with that. In fact, I think you should be able to immediately and fully write it off your taxes. So if you're a business and you invest money in a piece of machine, you get to write it off your taxes. If you're a parent and you spend money on your kids, you don't get to write it off your taxes. Who's more important for the future of America? And by the way, you can't get that tax credit unless you're working, so it's pro-work. It's not like you're sitting at home collecting it. You have to be working to do it. Yes, I want to help empower parents. You know why? So they have enough money to send their kids to the school of their choice. So they have enough money to save for their kids to go to college. And oftentimes so they can buy them a new pair of shoes or a new book bag. Because if you know people that are struggling as I do, you know that $50 a month, $40 a month is the difference about whether or not your kids get a new book bag this month, or whether they have to go another month with a book bag that has a hole in it. Because we see it. And so we are going to take our message to parents and young Americans and people that are struggling to get ahead and living paycheck to paycheck. And we're going to grow this movement. And I believe if we do these 2 things, we'll win. And then we will begin the hard work of turning the country around. It will begin when I'm president by following the Constitution. Everybody says that as a talking point. This is very serious. We have lost perspective in this country. We think the federal government is supposed to be involved in everything now. Everywhere I go, I get a question, what are you going to do as president about the college playoff system? I said, I don't know what we can do about it. I mean, I wish Florida was doing better. But that's not a federal issue. And it goes on and on. And then we've lost perspective on the presidency. When you hear some people talk, commentators, their attitude is like the president is the supreme leader of the country, and our job is just to rubber stamp whatever he says. It's happening now with this whole Supreme Court vacancy. He's the president. The Constitution says he gets to appoint someone, and you must do this. And I said, yes, but the Constitution also says we get to confirm. And so I said, well... And then they say, well, but the president, you know, elections have consequences. He won in 2012. And I said, yes, elections have consequences. And we won the majority in the Senate in 2014. So we've lost perspective. People have this idea in some corners of our political debate that the president is the supreme leader and the rest of us are just supposed to be there to like nod our heads and say, yes, Mr. President, we're going to go your direction. That is not our system of government. Our system of government, we need to get back to what it was designed as. And here's what it is. You have a legislative branch, a Congress that passes laws. They're the ones that pass laws, and they have to respond to you for the laws they pass. And then you have a president that execute the laws, that in essence carry out the laws that Congress passes, or can veto them and send them back. And then you have a judicial branch that decides whether or not it violates the Constitution as originally drafted. What is the original meaning of the Constitution? And you apply it, not to recreate it. We have to get back to those principles. We've lost those principles. We need to get back to those principles. I will. That's why when I'm personally a huge supporter of the Second Amendment. But even if I wasn't, and I am, we're going to follow the Second Amendment and we're going to protect it because it's in the Constitution. The Second Amendment is not a suggestion. Okay? It is a constitutional right to protect yourself and your family. When I'm president, you'll have a president that follows, upholds, protects, defends the Constitution and every aspect of it, from your Second Amendment rights to the right to live out the teachings of your faith in every single aspect of your life, including at work, at home, and in your business. You're going to have a president that speaks clearly on issues before this country. I can't impose my beliefs on anyone, but I can tell you this, when I'm president, I will never be ashamed to repeat and say this over and over again. I believe that all human life is worthy of the protection of our laws at every stage in that human life. Presidents don't grow the economy. I always chuckle when I hear governors or mayor or somebody says, I created 2 million jobs when I was governor. And I say, really? You hired 2 million people to work in government? I said, no. I said, well, then you didn't create 2 million jobs. The private sector creates jobs. How do you create jobs in the private sector? You know, many of you are in the private sector. It's when you start a business or you grow an existing one. That's what creates jobs. You know what our job is in public service? To put in place policies that make America the best and easiest place in the world to start a business or grow an existing one. That's why we're for tax reform. That's why we're for regulatory reform. That's why we're for balancing the budget. That's why we're for fully utilizing our energy resources. That's why we're for getting rid of Obamacare. You do that, and this country will become the premier place on the planet to start a business or grow an existing one and create better paying jobs. When I'm president, we're going to deal with our issues, not ignore them. I'm going to say something to you now, and I think I'm safe in saying this. This generation of leaders in Washington is the most selfish generation of leaders this nation has ever had. Selfish. Why do I say that? You want to know why I say that? Because they've got calculators in Washington, and they've got spreadsheets that show them what's happening with our debt, and they don't care. Their attitude is, who cares? Let the future worry about the future. They literally they don't care. They don't care that by the time my oldest child, my daughter who's 15, is 25, this country may be in the throes of a debt crisis. Their attitude is, so what? We'll worry about this later. We got to get through the next election. They don't care. They're so selfish. No generation's ever done that to their kids. In the history of America, has there ever been a generation like this? When I'm president, that changes. We're going to deal with the debt. And dealing with the debt means we're going to have to save Social Security and Medicare. We have to save those programs. Now, let me tell you about that. I'm from Florida. You probably don't know this, but there's a lot of people in Florida on Social Security and Medicare. One of them is my mother. So I just want you to know I am against any changes to Social Security and Medicare that are bad for my mother. Which is a good... And here's the great news. We don't have to change anything for her. She's 85. We don't have to change anything for anyone who's on it now. We don't have to change anything for people that are about to retire in the next decade. But your next president better be willing to tell you the truth, and I am right now here today. There is no way Social Security and Medicare looks the same for me as it did for my parents. I'll be 45 in May. I feel 46, but I'll be 45. Like, I really do. I don't know, but there's no way that the program won't exist. It will not be around by the time I'm 67, which is when I'm supposed to retire, unless we do something about it. And what do I mean by do something about it? It's nothing unreasonable. Right now I'm supposed to retire at 67 under current law. Maybe I have to retire at 68. That's not a big deal to retire at 68. Is that a heckler or a reporter? Maybe we should stop and listen to what they have to say. I'm supposed to retire at 67 under current law. I may have to retire at 68. You know what? If I was still in the Senate at 68, I'd be one of the youngest people there. Okay? I love it now, like the Washington Post will fact check me. 4 Pinocchios. The average age of a senator is 64. You know, whatever. You know what I mean. When I retire, if I've made a lot of money, let's say I became financially successful because An American Son became a movie, and then, you know, whatever, so my book. I made a lot of money. My Social Security benefits won't grow as fast as they grow for someone who made less money. If my Medicare could be the option of using my Medicare money to get a private plan that I like better, that's actually not a novel idea. It exists now. It's called Medicare Advantage. My mom is on it. And it works well in some places for some people. My point is, these are not unreasonable changes for someone like me who's 25 years away. I have 25 years to plan for that. And if we do it now, we can save Social Security and Medicare, bring our debt under control, and we don't have to disrupt it or change it for people that are on it now. I can't go to my mom at 85 and say, hey, guess what? You got to go back to work because your Social Security check's been cut by 20%. We can't do that. We're not going to do that. I'm telling you, if we don't do something, there'll be a debt crisis in less than a decade or so. And then I don't know what they're going to be telling people that are on Social Security and Medicare, but it will not be good. We're going to deal with that when I'm President of the United States. But, now, what is the most important thing a president does? National security. The commander-in-chief. It's the most important job of a president. And one of the reasons why Barack Obama is such a bad president, the worst president in 35 years, some people say the worst president in 235 years, but I'm not willing to say that because I don't know what president that's comparing him to. So I'm just saying that one of the reasons why he's just a bad president is because he is a bad commander-in-chief. Why do I say that? I don't say that lightly because I actually think national security should not be partisan. So if he was a Republican, I'd be saying the same thing right now. Why? Number one, because he's gutting our military. That's not an exaggeration. I'm going to tell you the facts, and you tell me if you agree or not that we're gutting our military. Our Army will soon be its smallest size since the end of World War II. Our Navy will soon be the smallest it's been in 100 years. And the Air Force will soon be the smallest it's been ever. The average age of an airplane in the Air Force is 27, which means the pilots are younger than the planes. That's a bad sign. Barack Obama thinks that's a great idea. By the way, this defense cuts is one of the big differences between me. And look, I'm not here to beat up on anybody personally, but there are differences. We talk about it. Some people talk to me and say, well, why vote for you and not Ted Cruz? Well, Ted Cruz voted for a budget that cut it even more. I'm not cutting defense spending when I'm president. It's the most important thing the federal government does. When I'm president, we're rebuilding the U.S. military. And this is not a position that I suddenly discovered 24 hours ago because I realized, oh, I'm in South Carolina. There's a lot of veterans and military people here. Let me be for growing the military after I voted against it 3 times. This is a position I've had from my first day in Washington 5 years ago. Why? Because this is why we have a federal government. We don't need a Department of Education. But why? We need a military. This is why we have a federal government. And here's the other lesson of history. Every time we've gutted our military, we've had to come back and make up for it. And it costs more money to make up for it. And why is it so important now? Because the world is not getting safer. The world is getting crazier. Okay, you have a lunatic in North Korea, a lunatic, with nuclear weapons and long-range missiles that can probably already reach the United States. Inventions, they hack into our computers. They have the capability now to blow up our satellites. They're massively expanding their military. Vladimir Putin, you see what he's doing in Europe and in the Middle East now. Iran is going to get $100 billion of sanctions relief. What are they going to spend that money on? Not on orphanages. They're going to spend it on their military, primarily and eventually building a nuclear capability of their own. And then we've got the growth of radical Islamic jihad. Radical Islamic jihad. And it is spreading all over the world. And we have to confront that too. So we have these 5 major threats, and we're gutting our military. This makes no sense. We're rebuilding our military. By the way, on the subject of radical Islamic jihadists, there's no accommodation with these people. I don't like war. None of you here are cheering for war. We want to avoid war. If it was up to America, there'd never be a war. We don't want war. The reason why sometimes you have to go to war is in defense of peace. ISIS is an enemy of peace. And there's no diplomatic solution to ISIS. There's no diplomatic solution. ISIS doesn't have an ambassador to the United States. Okay? And ISIS isn't interested in a diplomatic solution. They are an apocalyptic, radical Sunni movement. They believe that their job is to trigger an apocalypse. An Armageddon fight against the West, and that's going to bring out the 12th Imam, the Mahdi, they call it. That's their messianic figure. I'm not telling you this is what's going to happen. I'm telling you this is what they believe. People that believe that kind of stuff don't just go away. They don't open up a chain of car washes or Burger Kings. These people fight to the death, and they're willing to fight for 1,000 years. These people love death more than we love life. They have to be defeated militarily. And we don't have a real war on terror right now. You can ask our men and women in uniform, whose hands are tied, who are not allowed to carry, who are not allowed to win. We don't let them win. We put them in danger, but we don't let them win. That changes. When I am president of the United States, there's going to be a real war on terror, and we're going to win it. The best intelligence agencies in the world are going to find the terrorists. The most powerful military in the world is going to destroy them. Now, every now and then we'll capture one of these terrorists alive. Don't worry, they're not going to South Carolina. They're not coming here. They're going to Guantanamo. And let me say, as part of national security, we're going to take care of our veterans again in this country. We are going to take care of our veterans. This has been, what I'm about to do has been a pretty amazing experience in South Carolina. At most events, I'll ask, if you're a veteran, please stand up. But everybody's standing back there. So if you're a veteran, will you raise your hand, please, so we can thank you for your service? Thank you. I love doing that in South Carolina because most people raise their hand in the crowd. That's pretty, or a lot of people. So maybe we're going to do the reverse. If you're not a veteran, will you raise your hand so we can thank the people who don't have their hands up? There's actually someone here who's a veteran. My brother is a former Green Beret, 7 Special Forces, 68 through 71. He's sitting right here in the front row. Wave to everybody so they can see. So I know what you're thinking. That's his brother? You sure that's not his dad? That's one of the great things about running for president. I can make fun of people and they can't do anything back, you see? Because I have the microphone. Yeah. Well, it's true. My parents were incredible. So he was born, my mom was 19. And then when I was born, my mom was 41. That's called optimism. Because I have a younger sister after that. Can you believe it? Talk about believing in the American dream. Holy smoke. And true story, my brother had gone to the army, served 3 years, come back, and he drove my mom to the hospital because my dad was working. And so the nurses are like, you're the father, will you sign the birth certificate? I'm not the father. I'm the brother. She's like, oh, okay. So anyway, my parents are very optimistic people. And in Florida, we have a lot of veterans, too. I've asked Tim about this. Tim says about a quarter of his calls in his office are VA-related. About the same. I have 2 people in my office, 2 staffers that do nothing but veterans claims. That's how many we have. And it's sad. Yesterday, USA Today, top of the fold, headline. VA suicide hotline led many to voicemail. You imagine? You're in trouble. You served our country. It created some problems for you. You're thinking about taking your life, you call the VA hotline and you get a voicemail. You think anyone's going to be fired over that? They're not firing anybody. You think anyone's going to be held accountable? Not under Barack Obama. May get a bonus. Might get promoted. They're not fired. There's no accountability. We have to change that, and we will. But we will change that. Now, listen, I want to be clear about something. There are really good VA hospitals in this country. And I can tell you there are incredible people that work at the VA. Some of them are veterans. And they love this country and they love veterans. I'm not talking about them. We honor what they're doing. But there are some VAs that are not working well. Look, it's very simple. When I'm president, if you're happy with a VA hospital, you can keep going there. But if you're not, when I'm president, you will be able to take your VA benefits to any hospital or any doctor that you want to go to. You know what's also amazing about our veterans? How many of them don't stop public service when they come home. If you go to any fire station or police department in America, you're going to find a disproportionate number of veterans working there. My brother-in-law was a Marine, and now he's a firefighter. And one of the things that boils my blood is when I'm reading in the press every day, oh, the police are so bad, they're doing this, they're doing that. Let me tell you something. I thank God every day for our police officers and our firefighters, people that are willing to die before we do. And we want to thank them and their families. So, to wrap it all up, we have a lot of work to do, as you can see. These are just some of the issues we'll confront when I'm president. There'll be more. But we have to do it this year. 2016 will be a turning point. Most elections, and you've had a few spirited ones here in South Carolina over the years, most elections are a choice between a candidate, between two political parties. The fact is, there have been years in American politics where the difference between the Democratic and Republican Party has not been enormous. There's been some difference. You know, the Democrats like government a little bit more, we like it a little less. But by and large, no matter who wins, the country isn't going to collapse. That's not the case anymore. The Democratic Party's been taken over by radical left-wing elements. I mean, their leading contender, leading in some of the national polls, is an avowed Democratic socialist. I promise you that if someone that far right, as he is far left, had taken over the Republican Party, every day you would be hearing stories, the Republican Party's become radicalized. The Democratic Party's been radicalized. The Democratic Party's been radicalized. The differences today are significant. They're enormous. And the consequences are extraordinary. Because what's at stake in 2016 is not simply who will be the next president for the next 4 years. What is at stake in 2016 is what kind of country is America going to be in the 21st century. Now, over the last 14 days, up until yesterday or the day before, I've been blessed that my children have been able to be on the road with me. They're coming back Friday. They had to go back to school, you know. But they were with me for 14 days traveling. They were at a lot of our events. My youngest, Dominic, I couldn't even get him off the stage. He wanted to be on the stage with me. It's like, I can see one day me out there campaigning for him or something. But that was really good for me. Apart from being with your kids and your family, it was really good for me because every single morning when I woke up, and I looked over at that bed where they were sleeping, I saw what this election was truly about for me. And I know that's cliche to say, oh, the election's about our children. It really is. What we're deciding here is what is America going to look like when those kids graduate from high school or college? What kind of America will they inherit when they try to buy a home or start a business or a family? And what kind of America will they retire in and raise a family in? When I look around this audience, I see a lot of young people, a lot of young kids. I see babies. I love hearing the sound of babies at our events. I really do. Please, she's leaving with her baby. Don't leave. We want you to stay. We want you to stay. I really do. Because not only does it remind me of home a few years ago. My youngest is now 8. But it reminds me, even the sound of a baby reminds me, this is what this is about. And it reminds me of our place in history. See, we're a nation where for over 200 years, each generation has left the next better off. Each one. Think about that. You know this because you've lived it. I want you to think for a moment about what your parents did for you. I don't know the stories of virtually anyone in this room. Most of you I've never met personally. And yet, because you're Americans, I am comfortable saying this. Your parents gave up many things so you could be everything they weren't. I'm confident, not knowing anything about you personally, that in this room today, the vast majority of you benefited from sacrifices that your parents and grandparents made for you. I'm also confident in saying that in this room today, there are people that are doing it now for their kids. And whether you're doing it now or your parents did it for you, you don't have to go far in America to find someone who's doing that. I travel a lot, as you can imagine. And oftentimes I run into the maids at the hotels that are pushing those little carts with the towels and the soap on it. You know why they're doing that job? So their kids, they've told me this. I work this job so one day my kids can be anything, maybe even you. And you know why they tell me that? Because that's the job my mother had in Las Vegas. She was a hotel maid. And the reason why I'm so comfortable saying this to you is because that's not just my story. That is our story. That is the story of this incredible country where for over 2 centuries, people who work hard and sacrifice aren't just able to live a better life. They're able to open doors for their kids that were closed for them. And that's the country I want my kids to grow up in and inherit. If we lose that, we stop being special. Because every country in the world has rich people. And we love having rich people in America. We're 5% of the world's population and we have 40% of the world's millionaires. That's incredible. You know what's more incredible? The majority of those millionaires didn't inherit the millions. The majority of those millionaires started out with a business that had one person, them. That's an amazing achievement. An amazing achievement. But every country in the world has rich people. You know what makes us people? You know what makes us special? The people that aren't rich. Because when you become a firefighter or a police officer, when you dedicate your life to the service of our country in uniform, when you become a teacher, a nurse, an airplane mechanic, a car technician, a welder, a plumber, an electrician, you know you're not going to become a billionaire doing that. That's not your goal in life. Your goal in life is to have a job you enjoy, that pays you a fair wage, that makes enough money so you can own a home, save for retirement, take your kids on vacation, enjoy your weekends, retire with dignity, and leave your kids better off than yourself. That has a name. It's called the American Dream. And if we lose the American dream, we stop being a special country. And we are on the path and on pace to lose the American dream. And why I am so passionate about this election is because for me, America is the country that changed the history of my family. When my parents came here in 1956, my mother, my father, and my brother, who was six, they had nothing. They barely spoke any English. They had no formal education. In fact, my dad stopped going to school when he was 9 because his mother died and he had to go work. He never went back to school. They didn't know anyone. They had no money. They struggled in America. One of the famous stories in our family that I heard when I was writing my book was that when they lived somewhere one time, my brother's bed was a recliner that he shared with 4 rats, or 3. Maybe it was 3 rats. I don't want to get fact-checked. 3 rats, 4 rats. They struggled in this country. It wasn't easy. Here's what's so amazing. Less than 10 years after my parents came here like that, they owned a home in a safe and stable neighborhood. Years later, they would retire with dignity and security. Not wealth, but dignity and security. And they lived to see all 4 of their kids better off than themselves. That's the America that changed the history of my family. And that means I have a debt to this country I'll never repay. America owes me nothing. But I have a debt to this country I'll never repay. And I seek to be the presidency of the United States because I want to do something to repay it. Because of how much it's meant for me, but also because of how much it's meant to the world. So I'm here to ask you for your vote. I know you have choices to make. There are other people in this race, and you might like them as well. And I appreciate that. I know this has not been an easy process. When this race started, there were, 16 candidates? 1 out of 6 Republicans running for president. There's a lot of people. And so I know you still have some choices to make here. And they're good people running. Our candidates are better than their candidates. None of our candidates is a socialist. None of our candidates is under FBI investigation. But I'm asking you to vote for me because I'm as conservative as anyone in this race. And I have a 15-year record to prove it. But I'm also the one that can unify this party. If we don't come together, we can't win. And of all the people left in this race, I am the one that can most quickly unify the party so we can take on the challenge of growing it. Not just the party, but the movement. We need more conservatives. We need to convert more people to conservatism because in their heart, they're already there. In their heart, they are already there. But they've been told for so long that they can't be conservatives, because conservatives are not people like them. Conservatives are not people that live paycheck to paycheck, they say. Conservatives are not people that have student loans. Conservatives are not people that grew up without privilege. That's what they've been told for 25 years. And I know we can take our message to people and say, that's not true. Because I lived and have grew up the way you're living now, and I'm a conservative. Because it's better for me, it's better for you, and it's better for this country. We can unite this movement, and we can grow it, and we can win. And if we win this election, then we can turn this country around. And what I mean by turn this... You can clap for that. I needed some water anyway, so you can clap for that. We can turn this country around, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen when our work is done. Here's what history will say of us after we do what needs to be done. It will say that we, this generation, lived in the early years of this new century in a troubling time. The world was changing, and the American dream seemed to be slipping away. And then we rose up to the challenge. And then we did what each generation before us did. We confronted our challenges. We solved our problems. And by the way, we embraced our opportunities too. And when our work is done, when our work was done, our children became the freest and the most prosperous Americans that ever lived. When our work was done, the American dream didn't just survive. It reached more people and changed more lives than ever before. When our work was done, the 21st century wasn't just as good as the 20th century. It was better. It became a new American century. This is what we can achieve together, but it starts on Saturday, and that's why I need your vote. Elect me president, and we will be the authors of the greatest chapter in the amazing story of America. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.